Minister, let's start with you. Thank you so much for, to you and your beautiful country for hosting us. Now, with the visit of President Trump last week, there was a lot going on, of course, in Qatar. We saw huge commitments from the countries he visited, including this one. Were you under pressure to make a deal in the energy sector for President Trump?
First, it's great to be here at Bloomberg's with all of you, with Ryan and yourself again. Regarding the visit of President Trump, of course, it was a historic visit. We were very thrilled to have him here as the first sitting president to visit Qatar. Pressuring us on doing deals, I think, as you know, President Trump is a businessman, first and foremost, and he understands business very well. We had several deals that were done in Qatar during his visit. So there was the energy sector. If we look at the energy sector, we had a project in Qatar. For the last 70 years, we've had American companies here. So we've had several projects, Northfield East, Northfield South, where Ryan is a partner. These are all commercial projects that have American presence. We have two projects in the U.S., the largest single investment in LNG exports facility in the U.S., the largest ethane cracker in the world in the U.S., about $30 billion project. So these are all commercially viable projects that we're doing. From my vantage point as the chairman of Qatar Airways, we had a tender for buying airplanes that we need for the expansion of Qatar Airways, and Boeing gave us the best deal. It was better than Airbus, and we went ahead with that because it was the most commercially viable. If you look at our investments in QIA, we have already made a lot of investments in the US, and we're making more, and these are all commercial deals that we're doing. Our military are buying equipment that they need for their military. So regarding pressuring us to do deals, I would say no. I think we're happy to do deals with American companies because they provide a win-win solution for us. And all the deals that we do, like in the energy sector, are 25, 30-year deals. So they have to survive different administrations, CEOs, and so on. So I would say pressuring, no. But we're happy to do deals where they are mutually beneficial.
Minister, you mentioned you're chairman of Qatar Airways. You had some pretty incredible profits. So how do you see that going? How did you achieve them? And actually, how do you see the introduction of Riyadh Airlines in the region affecting your business?
Of course, we attribute the excellent profit to several factors. We have excellent staff, excellent leadership. So all the crew members, the pilots, the ground staff, everybody working in the company has contributed. Of course, first and foremost are the loyal clients to Qatar Airways that made this also possible. And also, this is a cyclical business. Everybody's doing well in the airline business, and we just need to keep going with the same rhythm to ensure that we continuously can have good profits. Regarding Riyadh Airline, I think we're very happy for our brothers and colleagues in Saudi Arabia that they are embarking on this expansion in the airline business. It's a huge country, Saudi Arabia, whether it's size of the country or size of population, and I think it's overdue to have additional airlines and airline products in Saudi Arabia. And if there's anything that we can do to support Saudi Arabia from Qatar Airways, we'd be happy to do that, but we wish them all the success, and I think it's very much needed for Saudi Arabia and the region.
Ryan Lance, President Trump pledged to drill, baby, drill. Is it happening? And if it isn't, why not?
Well, I think the president's got a unique ability to boil things down to a bit of a bumper sticker. I think the drill, baby, drill, people get fixated on how many rigs are running in the U.S. and is that representing a drill, baby, drill. I think it's a broader strategy that the president is trying to articulate around taking the natural resources that are endowed to the U.S. and really continue that growth and development. So it's got multiple dimensions. It's permitting reform to speed things up. It's more infrastructure being built, high voltage transmission lines, it's gas pipelines. It's eliminating the LNG pause that the prior administration put in. So I think it's a statement that articulates a broader strategy that wants to use the endowed resources that we have in the United States to continue that growth and that development and continue to be able to import and export energy that the full world needs today.
Break-evens for U.S. shale, I think, on average, pre-trade wars and tariffs, were about $65 a barrel. What's the new break-even level now that the cost of pipes have gone up, but also drilling has gone up because of tariffs?
Yeah, I don't think the break-even probably hasn't moved a lot. I think long-term, if you're going to see oil prices in a comfortable range, maybe in the 70s or 65 to 75, we'll still see continued modest growth out of the U.S. Now, what happens at sub 60 is we start to plateau in the U.S. and even in the 50s probably start to decline the production a little bit. So there is kind of a equilibrium place even in the U.S. that allows the shale to continue its maturity and its growth, but we see plateauing production probably the end of this decade coming out of the U.S. unless there's going to be another technological breakthrough in our business. And don't bet against our industry because we're, as His Excellency knows, we're pretty good at trying to figure out how to get more out of the subsurface endowment that we have in our country.
Minister, most of Qatar's LNG sales are also linked, of course, to oil prices. How has the oil's slump this year affected Qatar?
The oil slump, I would like to add to just what Ryan mentioned. In general, all oil companies look at their revenue and look at their capital expenditure over the next few years. And the way you can spend more capital, there are two things. There's capital to sustain. People don't talk about sustaining your actual production, which gets more expensive with time to maintain it and drill additional wells and so on. So you need a lot of revenue for that. In addition to that, the additional capex to expand and to keep additional reserves coming. And you need, in general, you'd need somewhere in the range of $70 to $80 in my view, to be able to sustain the current production and increase. And when you look at the U.S., for example, I mean, one of the things that came out of the visit is a better understanding of, with my counterpart, Chris Wright, Secretary Chris Wright from the U.S. and the colleagues that came with President Trump. They have an ambition of growing their power to for an additional 100 gigawatts of power. And that's for AI, that's for additional industry that they want to bring back into the U.S. All that needs power. And if you don't have additional investment, to sustain that power, from gas and other sources, they've opened up coal and others, it's going to damage that ambition, if you will. So I think if oil prices decline below 60, there definitely is going to be a decline in investment, and all the requirements for power are not going to be fulfilled. Worldwide, not only in the U.S.
And, Mr., are you committed to the oil price link, no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, the oil price link, I mean, some of our products are we produce oil, we produce condensate that's associated with gas, and some of our gas is linked to crude. But of course, if crude comes down, it affects the entire, whether it's petrochemicals, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, fertilizer, it affects the whole thing.
Ryan, I mean, to the minister's point, do you think Donald Trump's push for more energy production in the U.S., but also faster permitting of LNG products, will affect the market?
Well, we certainly hope so. If you think about the market in the LNG side, it's probably growing 1% to 2% compound annual growth. So it's a market that's growing from about 400 or so million tons today to something probably north of 700 million tons over the course of the next decade and beyond. So it's going to take a lot of growth. It's going to take growth in Qatar. It's going to take growth in the United States, the two biggest suppliers in the world, to satisfy the enormous amount of energy growth that's coming. It's going to be power, as His Excellency has talked about, around the whole world, not only in the United States, but around the world as well. So that's coming. And unfortunately, we're endowed with a very large gas resource, as is Qatar, with the large North Field. And we're proud to be a partner here and proud to be putting our investment in the U.S. for more liquefaction capacity and exporting that product to around the world as well.
Minister, where does potentially higher U.S. exports leave major LNG producers like Qatar?
Again?
Where, if the U.S. exports more LNG, where does it leave Qatar?
No, I think, we are the biggest supply that's going to come from the U.S. next year. We're going to start our LNG export by the end of this year, really start the full production sometime in the next year. But the first LNG that will come from our Golden Pass LNG, which is the largest single export project in one go that's built in the US, is going to have 18 million tons of production. We own 70% of that. So we will be exporters from the US. I think the US volumes are going to go to certain markets that are mostly Europe, South America, and our volume will predominantly be serving Asia. That it's difficult for the US, I think, to reach, or the entire volume to go to Asia. But in general, I think we need all that volume. It's us, it's the US, I think some Australian volume and others to care. You know, you're going to have 1.5 to 2 billion people on this earth in the next 20 to 30 years. And you have 1 billion people around the world that don't have basic electricity. So the need for electricity and power is huge. So we're not worried at all about having a supply glut or anything like that.
And I think I would add that people immediately go to the competition between the U.S. and Qatar. It's really not. It's a cooperation because of the different market access that both countries have to the growing demand. So it's a cooperation. It's really not a competition.
But how do you see this? I mean, when you look, Ryan, at the impact of Shell's new model of financial discipline or investor return, how is this different this time to previous downturns in 2015 and 2020?
Well, I think the balance sheets of the companies in the business is so much better. We've gone through consolidation and mergers and acquisitions, and the net result of that is the balance sheets of all our companies are in much better shape to withstand some of these downturns. Our company in particular, we've got a pretty deep inventory of low-cost supply resources, and that's what we're trying to drive so you can be profitable through the ups and the downs in this business. They're invariably going to be there. If you don't have a plan to deal with the volatility, you'll be dead in this business. Yeah. So, you got to have that, and it starts with a very strong balance sheet and being able to invest through the cycles with a very long-term global view of supply-demand, which we have, and it's very constructive.
And Minister, I know you've also been in talk with buyers such as China and India for a fresh round of LNG supply deals. Is there a sticky point? When can we have more news on that?
No, I think we're, after this talk here, I'm flying to China. We have the World Gas Conference in China that I'm speaking in tomorrow morning, and I'm meeting all the buyers in China. We have a great relationship with China. We are the largest supplier to China, and they are the biggest buyer by far, by more than double anybody else that's buying from Qatar. So we have a very good relationship. They are discussing with us additional volume. India is discussing with us additional volume, but we have multiple countries that are discussing with us additional volume. And these negotiations take time, and some go a little bit further. I think what you're alluding to is some articles that came out regarding sticking points and so on. You always have sticking points with all negotiations, whether it's with India, China, or anybody else. Everybody wants a better deal from both sides.
Everybody always wants a better deal, right? Let's face it. Ryan, when do you think U.S. shale production will peak?
Tell me the price. So if the price is in the 50s, we probably have a sustained price. So I'm talking about not just what's happening today, but if it sustains itself over a long period of time, U.S. shale is probably, it's peaked and will start declining in the 50s. It probably plateaus for quite a while in the 60s. And actually, if you get back to sort of that comfortable range that His Excellency talked about, there's continued growth in the U.S. shale. So we believe it could go in the 70s, it could go over 14 million barrels a day from its current level of low 13.3, 13.4. So it really depends on what that sustained price is going to look like. If we have a longer term price, like we're seeing today, it's going to flatten out.
Minister, Qatar was also amongst the first GCC states to invest in gas exploration and production around the world. So what new investments do you see on the horizon from Qatar?
Yeah, we are one of the largest, if not the largest company around the world in owning exploration blocks. Exploration has a 10% success rate. So if you drill 10 wells, one is successful. So we have been successful in some regions, but this is a continuous drive to explore more, and we're really participating in new exploration blocks around the world. We have had some successes, and I'm very optimistic about the future, but it takes time.
How much LNG is Qatar Energy trading currently? Is this something that...
LNG or trading?
Trading. There's a lot of excitement actually in the market about
Trading was something we started just a few years back. What we saw is there was money left on the table, if you will. Traders from around the world were buying Qatari, we have some spot cargoes sometimes, and they would buy our cargo and make money off it, and we have the capability and can actually establish a trading organization. So we did. We established a trading organization. Currently, we are trading around 10 million tons of LNG, physical trading of 10 million tons of LNG. The mandate is more than 50% needs to be non-Qatari volume, which is the case today. The ambition is by 2030 to reach somewhere in the range of 30 to 40 million tons of non-Qatari LNG traded by our trading group.
But will you also reserve a portion of the output from Northfield East for spot trading? And how big?
I think, we're going to be producing 160 million tons of LNG as projects that we are participating in, if you include the US. We're at 77 million tons today. We have 70 ships today. We're adding 128. So all that will be really under the control of our trading organization, where they can trade spot trade some of that volume. Not all of the volume will be locked up in long-term deals, but we'll have plenty to deal with.
Okay. Ryan Lanza, in the minute that we have left, how do you see demand over the energy industry actually developing over the next year and two?
Well, I think we're pretty constructive in the demand. It's probably dropped off a little bit with all of the economic uncertainty in the world today. So demand grows probably 700,000 to 800,000 barrels a day this year. But long term, I think you can expect around 1 million barrels a day of growth. And we really don't see the end of that coming into this decade, into the next decade. So that's why we're constructive long term. There's a little bit of spare capacity on the supply side, which has caused the price to be down a little bit with some economic uncertainty. But the long-term growth projections are pretty healthy for this business.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for a good conversation on global energy supplies and security. Thank you.
Thank you very much.